man, I really always happen to be wearing red for these videos. I need a little more contrast in the future. Oh my. Anyway, on to more important topics. The studio is still getting some renovation here, so we are working pretty hard on getting that on. The Tech Summit podcast will hopefully get back on at some point next month, but let's see, maybe earlier, maybe later. However, I just figured that I would give you guys that update. Anyway, I first got the 3DS back in December of 2014, 3 years after it came out, but I spent a lot of hours playing games on it. Some are not liked and some are beloved by many. The last time that we saw any physical, as in any hardware upgrade for any kind for the 3DS line was back in 2018, and ever since, all of the attention has been going directly to the Nintendo Switch, and rightfully so. Now, I still play with my 3DS to this day, so I am pretty well versed in what's going on regarding the 3DS and the 2DS line, because I also happen to own a 2DS. So let's explore the current state of the Nintendo 3DS in 2021, and should you get one in 2021. Let's go ahead and dive right in. Before we continue, don't forget that I have a Twitch channel that you can go ahead and follow me on for live microphone reviews and much more than that. But you're also going to find my Instagram and a link to the Tech Summit Discord in the description. So come join the community because it is a pretty cool one. We've also opened up a Patreon as of late where if you join, you'll be automatically entered to win one tech gadget every month in our exclusive giveaways. Details to that are going to be down below. Don't forget to check out the description for everything. Now let's get right into the video. So let's go ahead and talk about the exterior design of the 3DS. This is a clamshell design where you can open and close this device. It's always been made of plastic, but the finish on it has changed over time, where first we had a glossy finish and now we have matte options too. Though the glossy options are still there, but they're not nearly as glossy as they used to be. As always, you're going to find both of your displays on this device, with one being a 16:9 screen and the other being a 4:3 display, I believe, running at different resolutions, but they're just slightly different apparently. But we are going to be talking about them a little bit more later on. And you're also going to find your typical buttons for any Nintendo system, and I'd say that everything besides the nipple feel pretty satisfying to press, and the thumbstick is very nice to use. Now you still get the stylus for drawing if you want that, writing, or just working with the bottom screen, and it even has a headphone jack in case you would rather have the audio more privately. So that's also pretty cool. Now there is going to be a micro SD card slot on the inside of this device. So if you do want to upgrade the storage inside, you do have to open it up from the back if you have this particular model of the new 3DS XL. Not every model is going to be like this, but for the new 3DS XL, that's just how it is. The one that I have in hand here actually is the Fire Emblem Fates edition, which is in black and white, which is perfect since it is the color scheme of this channel, and they even added some carbon fiber skins to the face of this device for a nicer texture. I've always liked how customizable the 3DS line has always been. And the 3DS, or at the very least the new 3DS XL, does have two very outdated displays, and this is actually as good as it gets. So here we have a 4.88 inch 400 by 240 display up on the top, and then a 4.18 inch 320 by 240 resolution display right on the bottom. And now that is going to be the touchscreen itself. And both displays are obviously not very good by today's standards, and even back then they were just a little bit outdated, considering that the PlayStation Vita came out with an OLED display at a higher resolution. And I know that for the 3DS, it is pretty convenient to keep the resolution low so that playing certain games on it can actually be doable. For the PlayStation Vita, you got a ton of performance in a very small body and a much better screen screen for that matter, and it was still a touchscreen. And speaking of power, like you could run Final Fantasy X as well as Persona 4 Golden and so much more on the Vita. So the 3DS does fall short in that regard, but I don't really hate the display either. I still think that they are serviceable, but I can't really give it any more praise than that. So honestly, surprisingly, the 3DS is still receiving support from Nintendo, which is what made me slightly hesitant to make this video, because maybe it was just a little bit too soon for me to start talking about the Nintendo 3DS again, but we aren't really seeing first-party games coming to it anyway, so right now we are just getting stability updates to the OS, and that's about it. However, we got an update last time, I believe it was sometime in July of this year, so Nintendo is still offering some support in that regard, but it's nothing crazy. And as for the eShop, it is still currently active, so you can easily just go ahead and purchase and download whatever game you want. You've got just about everything here, but keep in mind that there is a very strong possibility that the eShop for the Nintendo 3DS will close at some point in 2022, so we won't have those for much longer. So when it comes to the games, I think that the 3DS had some really good games, but a lot of duds for me at least. Games like Kingdom Hearts 3D, which I really liked, but a lot of people hated. Pokemon Omega Ruby, Bravely Second, and Default, Shin Megami Tensei 4, and Apocalypse, along with Mario games and Sonic games here and there. And we also had a rather expansive list of indie games for sale, and I did try a couple of them, but I didn't really think that the games were all that fun. As you can probably tell, I'm just much more of an RPG kind of guy, and while the 3DS had some amazing RPGs in there, but to me, there were few that I could sink my teeth into, but those that I could sink my teeth into could easily squeeze hundreds of hours out of me, especially Pokemon Omega Ruby. So as of now, that pretty much hasn't changed, at least from a vanilla perspective. More on that pretty soon. I've always felt like the 3DS has always had some pretty good battery life. I would say that maybe it would last sometime between 6 and 8 hours based off of my own usage, but I mean, I don't have to charge it very often, and when I play with it, I maybe play with it for like an hour or two per day, and sometimes I skip days, so you know, there is that. However, here is the thing. Similarly to the PlayStation Vita, I think that you should probably homebrew your 3DS so that you can download emulators and some older games as a result too. On my 3DS, I was able to customize it to my liking, where I was able to homebrew a theme that isn't available on the theme shop whatsoever, and this is a Kingdom Hearts one that I found that actually plays the dearly beloved theme in the background, and I absolutely love that. I really wish that my Switch could do that, but sadly we are stuck as we are. I also use Twilight as a hub for different emulators, and here I can actually play SNES games like Final Fantasy VI or even regular DS games that aren't really being sold anymore, like Pokemon Platinum and so much more. Now, there is going to be quite a lot that you can do from here, and I even managed to squeeze in a 256GB micro SD card onto my 3DS for downloading all of these games that I want without ever worrying about storage, which is pretty great considering that the 3DS is technically just limited to, I believe, 32GB, and I don't think that that's enough for, well, if you're going to be mostly a downloads type of person. And I know that there's more that you can do with your 3DS, but these are essentially things that I really think make it worth it, because the DS by itself, for instance, has a fantastic games library, and it's really nice to be able to access that. And now the 3DS is still getting updates, and while I won't really advocate for downloading ROMs, well, I did that, and I don't really regret it, since the 3DS is no longer being produced, nor are games being produced for it anymore. Just minor software updates that I'm very sure will also end pretty soon. So in conclusion, the 3DS line was always really cool, and while these aren't really being made anymore, you can still get your hands on a 3DS or a 2DS XL pretty easily and get into the homebrew scene to really get the most out of your 3DS. I can recommend this if you like tinkering tinkering with your system, because there is a lot that you can do with it, but I also recommend this to people who really need a hub to enjoy 3DS games or even just original DS games, along with many other emulators that you can download onto it. I will keep mine forever, and I hope that you will too. So that is essentially the current state of the 3DS in late 2021. And now thank you so much for accompanying me on this journey. Now for patrons for this month, by the way, for the month of September, we are going to be giving away a microphone that has been pretty difficult for people to actually get their hands on, and this is going to be the Fifine K658 podcast microphone. So this is a USB dynamic microphone, and Fifine sent one over to me so that I could go ahead and give it away to one lucky patron. So if you are interested in winning one of these, as well as getting extra content and early content, then do make sure to stop by on the Patreon. So links to that down below. And if you're interested in purchasing a 3DS or a 2DS, I'm going to be leaving links to whatever I can find down below, which are going to be affiliated. So if you use those, I would appreciate that quite a bit. And I would love to give a very big thanks to all of my patrons, beginning with the tier 3s, which are going to be Saad Abulzal, Joe Moss, and Omar. Thank you so much for all of your support, because it really does go a very long way. Now onto the rest of the patrons coming right up. And this is super important. I would just like to give a very special thanks to all of our patrons, which are going to be listed right here on the screen. Again, a massive thanks to you all for supporting us to help us create the kind of content that we bring to you on a day-to-day basis. And thank you so much for supporting the Tech Summit podcast as well. And just remember that if you would like to be a part of this community too, and then do make sure to check out the links to our Patreon, where you don't only get bonus episodes of our podcast, but you also get automatically entered into one of our monthly giveaways of a tech product that we have reviewed that is of at least $50 in value or higher. So links to that down below. And now don't forget to follow me on Instagram and on Twitch, where I do stream fairly often. Now with that said, this has been Francisco from Tech Summit. Thank you for watching, and I will be seeing you all later. Enjoy.